Okay, so hi everyone. First, I would like to thank the people from the ArcUI community who had the idea for this workshop, and of course the local organizers who put all this together, and for inviting me to talk here. I'm very happy for this opportunity because I just finished my PhD on topics in ArcUI, and I'm very happy to be here for a postdoc. So this is a nice opportunity of roughly summarizing what I've been doing and trying to put it in like the overall context of what's going on in the topic of QFT measurements recently. So this is not going to be a very technical talk, so hopefully it's easy to follow at this time of the day. I will talk about aspects of QFT measurements, and in particular aspects that have to do with the role of scattering, considerations of causality, how we can use detector models to understand causality, and so on. Okay, so talking about measurements in QFT, first two basic observations. First, that the standard measurement axioms, the axioms that give us the probabilistic predictions of quantum theory, such as Born rule and the state update rule, are not part of quantum field theory and not even its axiomatic formulation. And in fact, as Sorkin pointed out in this 1993 paper that has become very popular recently, the naive extension of these axioms into quantum field theory can lead to frictions with relativistic causality, which is what he called impossible measurements. But then, of course, measurement is possible in quantum field theory in a different sense. So in the standard formulation of QFT, standard predictions that are very well experimentally verified and so on, standard predictions of QFT take the form of asymptotic scattering amplitudes. So this might give the impression, at least when we first learn QFT, that QFT is a theory about scattering. But is this a case? Is QFT a theory about scattering? As we will as I will argue, partially yes and partially no. So no, because modeling local measurements in quantum field theory, local rather than asymptotic, I mean, is possible within QFT, and there has been a lot of progress recently about this, and this is what we try to summarize in this review paper with Doreen Fraser. And partially yes, also because this requires local generalizations of scattering theory, basically. So talking about scattering and how QFT became a theory about scattering and so on, the historical perspective can be very, very interesting. There is this very interesting work by Alex Bloom, where he describes this shift from instantaneous or stationary states, which is typically what we calculate in quantum mechanics, to asymptotic scattering amplitudes in QFT. So this is a shift. He calls it a paradigm shift that took like several decades. What we did in this short note, again with Doreen Fraser, a philosopher of quantum field theory at the University of Waterloo, is that we basically revisited some historical episodes that were happening in parallel to this shift, while quantum field theory was getting established as a scattering theory, so to say. But in parallel, there were very interesting episodes on modeling local measurements in QFT. We revisit these episodes starting from the early history of quantum field theory in the 1930s. The 1930s is an interesting starting point because roughly, it marks both the beginning of quantum field theory was still in the making, and the beginning of quantum measurement theory, what we call today quantum measurement theory, which is due to the work by von Neumann in the early 1930s, the axiomatization of quantum mechanics, and so on. So yeah, QFT and quantum measurement theory were starting together in the 1930s. They were not overlapping so much. So it's interesting to revisit these episodes also because on the way there are some considerations that led to the tradition of the algebraic tradition to quantum field theory. But anyway, this would be a separate talk. So for now, I'm just going to say that from today's perspective, one moral that someone can draw is that in the end, modeling local measurements within quantum field theory did not necessarily require going back to instantaneous states or anything like that, basically undoing this, but rather introducing local generalizations of scattering theory. Examples of that are both the detector model approach in quantum field theory, also in Kurzweil times, and also the Fusser inverse framework in the context of algebraic quantum field theory. I call it local generalization of scattering theory, but of course, how local these generalizations are crucially depends on how the dynamics is modeled. Depends on the locality properties of the dynamics over the interaction region. Something interacts with the field over here, for example, and then the next region doesn't have to be asymptotically far in the future, but it just has to be in this generalized out region, which is everything but the causal past. And then, yes, the dynamics and how the dynamics is modeled becomes important. So the role of dynamics is something that can be appreciated when one is considering particular models for detector field interactions. In particular, in our work, we considered Unruh de Wit type detector models. And then the role that the dynamics plays in what operations are allowed, what operations are possible, and what operations lead to friction with relativistic causality becomes important and has interesting interpretational consequences about the form that the measurement problem takes in QFT. But there's no time to really go into this. I just put a very interesting reference about this over here by Emily Adlam. And then more like in a more of like a pragmatic spirit, what we quantified basically in this work with José de Ramón and Eduardo Martín Martínez, what we analyzed was that basically how much of a causality violation you get in some setups really depends on how local the dynamics is. For example, in very nice local frameworks like the FV framework, in which you don't get this effect of impossible measurements, you don't take this type of causality violation. It's basically thanks to a nice causality, a nice dynamical property that's called the local time slice property. What we're asking basically is that what if you don't have all these nice locality assumptions? And in these setups, an advantage of the detector model approach is that you can actually quantify these violations for concrete models that are typically used in quantum optics and quantum information in general by means of the scales, the physical scales that come into the problem, like coupling strength and energy scales and so on. So I will not go through the details of how we analyzed it, but just one important property of the dynamics that we proved for some cases is the causal factorization of the joint scattering map. When you have two detector field interactions like this, they're causally orderable because this one doesn't intersect the causal past of this one. This is the unitary that basically corresponds to both interactions, and in general, this doesn't split, right? And in some cases, it follows from a microcausality, similar to the spirit of what we were hearing before, in a way, that for causally orderable, compactly supported interactions, this map actually factorizes. And if the two regions are in space-like separation, which here they're not exactly, the maps also commute. This guarantees that no faster than light signaling and no retrocausation in bipartite scenarios like this. But if we move to more complicated scenarios with more regions, like the ones that are considered in the Sorkin type problem, then microcausality alone, which leads to causal factorization, is not enough for blocking these causality violations. So that has to do with this region over here being sensitive to what's going on over there through this intermediate region that partially invades the forward light cone of this one and partially invades the past light cone of that one. So it's basically because it's not enough that the expectation values are unaffected in space-like separation, but that a local kick that someone can impose locally over this region cannot get propagated to B through A. This, as we formulated it in this paper, is a dynamical requirement that basically fails due to the fact that the current, well, I showed it previously, but I didn't explain it. So you have like detector current that's coupled to the field here. If this detector current is not microcausal due to the non-relativistic dynamics, then you get this sort of like superluminal dynamical effect. So nevertheless, what we could do is that for weakly coupled detectors, this type of causality violation is subleading order in perturbation theory, and you can give arguments in terms of the regime of validity of the model on a case-by-case fashion. Okay, just a quick recap up to here, and then I'm just going to make one more point, and I'm done. Okay, so what I try to argue is that one can model measurements over finite space-time regions, in this sense, local measurements, using QFT. And this goes through the local generalizations of scattering processes that one can describe by supplementing QFT with suitable models or with suitable frameworks. And this is also a way to make sense of ad hoc causality conditions that have been introduced in this nice work over here. And by ad hoc, I mean that these causality conditions are model independent. So by considering a particular model and see basically a special case of what can go wrong, you can know also how to fix it. So yes, these causality conditions are more complicated than simply microcausality. Perhaps the intuition that microcausality is sufficient for arbitrary configurations of interactions comes also from the cluster decomposition in scattering theory, but in these types of situations, it's not enough. So they go beyond microcausality. That's basically a kinematical condition. These conditions are dynamical in nature. They depend on how the dynamics is modeled. And this is also a nice paper that emphasizes that the correct causality conditions in QFT are in essence dynamical because the degrees of freedom themselves, the kinematical degrees of freedom are dynamical. And something that I didn't say, but I'm just going to claim this. Something that I find puzzling actually is that these causality conditions are also global in nature. So they depend on the overall configuration, on the overall setup. They're hard to motivate from the local perspective of what I'm supposed to be doing over a local region, no matter who else is doing whatever anywhere else. And this is a challenge for interpreting the formalism, basically. So another thing that I mentioned, in particular in the context of the Unruh-Dewitt type models, is that the causal behavior of the model is well described in the particular case of compactly supported and causally orderable detector field interactions. In this case, we can characterize the causal behavior on a case-by-case basis, both perturbatively and non-perturbatively, thanks to the causal factorization property of the dynamics. And of course, there's always more things you can say perturbatively. And then there is this question that also came up in the previous talk, whether this assumption of compactly supported detector field interactions in space and time is an idealization that we can remove. And if we remove this idealization, what notions of causality would be available then? In the case of long-range interactions, or if we want to consider the long-time limit or the adiabatic limit. And maybe there's some stuff we can say, well, we have said some stuff in the context of perturbation theory, but even more so beyond perturbation theory, when you have, for example, strong interactions that are always on, are there any notions of causality that we can come up with? Well, there's no answer to this. There is a partial answer to that. So I will just mention some things and then I will close. Okay, so for weak interactions that are non-compact, either in space or in time or both, such as in the adiabatic limit, In this work here, we defined some signaling estimators, second order in perturbation theory. It's based on quantum metrology and can be used to quantify this sort of like crosstalk that distant detectors can have when they're not fully space-like separated, but they're mostly space-like separated. This is important also for purposes of quantum communication, entanglement harvesting, and so on. Similar considerations are taken into account in these protocols. Now, one extra thing I would like to say is that beyond perturbation theory, and for interactions that are always on, so they don't vanish in the infinite limit, there are solvable models that one can consider, and we did so in this work with Jose de Ramon and Haris Anastopoulos. So basically, we adapted the formalism of quantum Brownian motion, which is a formalism about how one single harmonic oscillator interacts with a quantum field. And this can give a solvable model that can be used to characterize all the stuff that usually we do also with perturbative techniques like quantum communication, entanglement harvesting. This is a classic reference, and I'm putting some more over here about these topics. Well, we didn't use it for describing causality. As I said, this is an open problem that it's interesting to work on. We used it to understand better what do detectors detect, because usually the particle interpretation of the detector response, a detector works as a particle detector, so to say. This relies on the weak coupling regime. This interpretation of the response as like a click that the detector does when records a particle is applicable in the weak coupling regime. We considered the solvable models to characterize, to see what the detector measures in the strong coupling regime. In the strong coupling regime, it's insensitive to the particle content of the field, and it's basically correlated with smeared field averages. And these solvable models can be used also to characterize somehow the intermediate regime. And again, yes, it's an open question whether field amplitudes, for example, in the strong coupling regimes, are measured in a way that respects causality or not. And there are indications that actually not. So yeah, but this is an open, this is work in progress. So, okay, I will just finish with this kind of landscape of approaches. I only mentioned approaches that fall under this category of local generalizations of scattering processes. The detector models approach, which is also what I mostly worked on, and also the Fewster-Verge framework in the algebraic setting. But I should mention for completeness that there is also another paradigm, the histories-based approaches. I mentioned these two programs here that rely basically on generalizations of the path integral approach. There might be more that I'm not mentioning here. All of these programs are very active today, and we have a lot to learn about how they relate to each other and what more can be done. But I would say that the common goal of all these approaches is to come up with a consistent and practicable formalism for local measurement theory in QFT. And of course, to come up with its interpretation, because the formalism alone doesn't tell you how to interpret it. And on that front, I think we have a lot to learn about the foundations of quantum theory from historians and philosophers of QFT. I learned a lot working with Doreen Fraser. And in the spirit of today's workshop, I should mention that there are interesting opportunities through the visiting program of KISS. Yeah. Thank you very much.